Welcome back to this DynamoDB tutorial. Here our customer table has turned active, and now we can click on this and start working on the information that is associated with it, as well as adding a couple of lines by hand. If you see here, we are on the overview tab. Here we have some information about our table, how many bytes of storage size we have, how many items we have stored here, so on and so on. Let's go over to items. And currently we only have the customer ID as a specific column. We're going to be creating a new item by coming over to create item, and this is going to be a single row that we store. So let's specify the customer ID number. I'm going to do something like 1001. Come here, do an append, and here we're going to be adding a first name. So do fname, and here we're going to be having John as the first name. Do another append string, and here we're going to be having an L name, and here we're going to be having Stuart as the last name. This is all we're going to be specifying for this person. Let's hit save, and you can see we have specified the customer ID, first name, and the last name. Now this was quite simple. We didn't even have to specify the schema for the table, so we didn't have to say we're going to be having first name of this specific schema, of this specific kind of data, and of this specific length. We automatically added this information, and the specific data types were calculated from the data that we inserted into that specific field. We can actually create another one of these items. Let's go over to create item. Here we're going to be typing in the number as 1002. Let's append one more, and this time we're going to be appending the first name. So here we're going to be having fname, and this is going to be Melissa. Let's add one more. This is going to be L name, and this is going to be Jones. Now there are lots more data types that we can add. We have the binary data types, numbers that we can add. Let's select a Boolean data type here. So we're going to select something like prospect. So is this person a prospect for sales? And here we're going to put something like false. So here we have added a new column. Let's go and hit save. You can see very easily we can add new information to the table structures, and you can see why it is so powerful when it comes to scaling data. For example, when you have unstructured data, you may have many different kinds of columns. Many of these missing values may be there, so on and so on, and you may have to update the table schema to accommodate for the data that is coming in. That is called unstructured data, where you don't have data from a tabular format coming in. When you have unstructured data, your data types of columns are not going to be set, the data columns themselves are not going to be set, and the table structures are not going to be set either. Here you can very easily and dynamically add more columns and add more data types to the existing table that you have. Now that we have added these two, let's move on to the metrics aspect. In the metrics aspect, we have the key metrics which are used to understand how our database is working. So these metrics are going to be explaining to us information about the read capacity and the write capacity. These capacities are going to be very important when it comes to the understanding of how you're going to be billed, and also understanding how much of this database is being used. So the load of the database you can understand from the amount of requests that you get for read and the amount of requests that you get for writing. In the bottom here we have latency. So latency is going to be how much time does it take for the database to respond. If you want to provide a low latency service, which you want to do regardless of whether the customer is going to be accessing or whether it's a business user, you want to provide the lowest amount of latency, and for that you need to be managing your CPUs and information like that. So you need to attach more instances possibly, or expand the size of your database. All of those things you can understand from these metrics that you have here. Now there's one thing that we didn't see, that was the get information and the reads. So let's actually come back to items, and let me show you how you can sort of search for the information here. And this is a similar way from the API how you're going to be allowing access to the data. So here, instead of scanning the table, we're going to use query. The query aspect is something that is from SQL, and using the information about the customer ID, which is a unique primary key, we're going to be giving something like 1001. I'm going to do a start search, and you can see we have 1001 appear here. We have the customer ID come up like this, and if we can click on this and we can take a look at this item. If we just leave this item as is, this is going to be a read. If we edit the item, then we're going to be writing to this specific database. Let's take a look at one last aspect, which is going to be creating alarms. So you can do what is called the creation of an alarm. What this does is it's going to be allowing you to add information about how many read capacities are being consumed, and if the read capacity goes over a specific limit, then it's going to be alerting you and telling you that, hey, there's a problem here. Maybe somebody is overusing or overextending the resources that we have. We're going to be billed a large amount for this, something like that. And you can create one of these topics, and you're going to be sent an email regarding this. And here you can specify information about what limit you want to set, and you can specify about how many consecutive periods are required before this is sent over. So if you see here, you can say for at least one consecutive period of 5 minutes. For 5 minutes straight, we have been having a overage of, say, 10 or whatever thousand, how many capacities that have been used. So you can specify all those alerts here, and it's going to be sending you an email whenever something like that happens. So thank you for joining me here. Hopefully you understand how DynamoDB works and how we can add new data over to our DynamoDB tables and how we can search here. Thank you for joining me, and let's move along.